internet connection to save my life. So, all right, I'm going to start number 2 again out of 10, counting down. Storyline ideas for Last of Us Part 3. Okay, so just to piggyback off of the very ending of the last video called Storylines of Last of Us 3, that Sony could easily, you know, start tinkering with, or having that studio tinker with. So again, one of the greatest accomplishments, and I can't stress this enough, is the whole franchise's ability to provide breadth to its backstory through journal entries and lost letters. Players can spend a lot of time trying to get a deeper understanding of what happened to individuals, as well as how other larger events unfolded. There are people that are hiding for themselves. There are soldiers for the wolves and soldiers for the fireflies that have their own side of the story, that have their own recounting of, what happened, what they heard their generals say, what the rations were like, what the punishments were like, and writing writing to other fellow soldiers each other's grievances and about the movement and how it's all going, and speculating on what would be a better way of getting through this and surviving. So there's a lot to it. So one way of further padding out this backstory would be to have specific, episodic, flashback episodes, episodic interquels that are kind of realized before one final chapter of the game. So utilizing the flashback feature, which I don't like to do too much of, players could live out Ellie's transition to life in Jackson. And then as she establishes friendships with characters such as Dina, Jesse, and Kat, because they just pop up. We're supposed to care about them. Okay? So that story writer who was in charge of this whole story, it's like, oh yeah, I did it so that, I forced a narrative, I did it cruelly, I wasn't gonna sugarcoat it. It's like, what I call that rushed story writing, and it sucks. I don't care what third world country you're from, your story writing sucks. That doesn't mean you're gonna write the best story in the world just because of what you come from. Tons of people have come from America. Tons of people have come from that third world country that you're from. Okay, born of conflict doesn't mean people just become the best story writers. It doesn't make them graduated into the elements of story writing and storytelling to where you can just automatically write a compelling story. You might have the most meaningful message, but if you don't know how to tell the story, no one's going to care. That's what happened here in part 2. So here, we could do a little, interquel as opposed to a prequel or a sequel, an interquel, where we actually flash back and play as Ellie establishing friendships and characters into the Jackson camp, where they all survive as a nice close-knit city, meeting Dina, Jesse, and Kat. So Ellie also has to navigate through her deteriorating relationship with Joel, because we were, as players, we were not hoping for some deteriorating relationship. Yeah, we thought, okay, it might be a bumpy conversation, it'd be a good scene, but not like this grudge match that's based on partial information slightly discovered through the years progressively. That's an annoying lack of communication. That's not compelling. It's annoying. Okay, the whole Ross and Rachel thing was only useful once. Okay, the whole back and forth and that show plays off every one of its conflicts as, this oopsie daisy lack of communication that drives the hilarious plot. Okay, so now that's good in comedies. It's not good for real life drama, post-apocalyptic survivalism. It's stupid. So here's the thing. We want to see Sony could have the studio go through an interquel that also navigates through her deteriorating relationship with Joel and her burning desire to know the truth behind the events of Salt Lake City. Okay, so yeah, let her wanted to know the truth, but not drag it out like the flashbacks already kind of did in part 2. So in the background, in this way, players could witness like the evolution of Jackson from its small dam fortifications in the first game to its vibrant cityscape as seen in the introduction of part 2. Like, that's a huge transition that we just jumped to. So Jesse and Dina could be more fleshed out. The players could be given more reasons to see their significance in Ellie's life. Also, witnessing the relationship between Ellie and Kat could further expand upon Ellie's coming out to Joel and the wider community, as well as the reactions to it. Although, at this point, I don't care about all that. This is not 1998. Okay, the idea of coming out is not a literary device that's going to shock the world anymore. So, your social justice forced fed giant spoon of vomit is not going to taste good or feel good, you know? And then, of course, the writer might say, well, it wasn't designed to feel good. It was designed to be reality. Really? In a survival apocalyptic world, everyone's worried about whether or not a homosexual is a homosexual or a bisexual? No. That doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't protect you from living zombies. It doesn't do anything. Okay? People are not going to revert back to 1995. What is this, a futuristic historical story? Or because of survivalistic worlds, you know, it's going to revert people back to tribalism, not based on just who they know, which is understandable, but based on whether or not they're gay or have bisexual tendencies. Come on, man, give me a break. That's not, no one cares. Like, oh, you're bisexual? Okay, but who are you with? A girl? Okay, so at the moment, you're a lesbian. Oh, you're with a guy right now? Okay, well, at the moment, you are committedly heterosexual. Okay, that's like saying, oh, I'm heterosexual, but I really am bisexual. That's like saying, you know, okay, well, I'm an alcoholic who never drinks. I never drink, but I have tendencies to want to. Okay, good for you. Like this, it's not anything. A lot of this stuff is just, ugh. It's not relevant. Okay, if I see a person having a heterosexual relationship, but they still want to say, but I am bisexual, it's like, okay, that's great. That's like a married man to a wife saying, I'm sometimes adulterous, because they happen to think about other women for flashes of seconds during the day. It's completely arbitrary and it's meaningless. That's like bragging about how you have desires. Hey, but sometimes I have desires. Oh, okay, you're a vegan, but sometimes you want some coffee cake? Okay. Cool. Doesn't change anything. It doesn't do anything. It's stupid, you know? So that's my way of making fun of that whole like that whole social justice, you know, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, while they could, and storyline number 2, while they could go back and flashback and have us live out the development of a city, like a little small dam fort, and have it evolve into the vibrant city that we see in the beginning of part 2, and we could see the witnessing of Ellie's relationship with Kat while coming out to Joel in a wider community. Again, like I say, I can't stress this enough, in a futuristic setting, in a survivalistic setting, no one's going to revert back to, you know, 1980 to 1998 tribalism about, you know, heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual tendencies. They're not going to be super judgmental, you know, and even we're not. Like, we're being shoved this game story down our throats as if we're judgmental 1998, you know, people that don't know how to comprehend bi or homosexuals in life. And that's called pandering. They just really pandered to the audience and treated the audience like, you know, this is unacceptable to judge Ellie for having this tendency, and so here we're going to flesh this out, and Joel tries to save the day, but Ellie still gets mad at him because you don't need to fight my battles. She's basically just a whiny teenager, And that's really all it amounts to. But Mr. Story Writer wants to be like, I come from third world country, and this is reality. I force the narrative. You know, there's no comfort. I take away comfort in this game. Yeah, it's scary. It's like, no, it's really annoying, the story is. It's an amazing game with great gameplay, but like, you know, this right here, having to sneak up on these enemies, not knowing exactly where they are because they're quiet, that's great gameplay. Okay, but no one's, when we're trying to survive in encampments, no one's going to care about the sexual tendencies. Okay, like I said, that's like saying, you know, when she is with a guy, that's like her saying, oh, I'm with him, but I still am bisexual. That's like saying I'm a vegan, but I still have desires of coffee cake. No one cares. That's all in your mind, and it's not what we see. That's like a husband saying to a wife or vice versa, oh yeah, I'm married, but you know, sometimes I think about other people for a couple seconds. It's like, oh yeah, that's what a great identity I should put on you for that. You know, it's like, so it's not compelling. It's a total nothing with a ton of time spent on stuff that does not matter. But in the LGBTQ community, well, we just want it to matter. It's like, well, that's the thing. You've already succeeded. It doesn't matter to us. We're not going to have mastermind prayer circles and kumbaya circles around, aren't you just glad that we just don't even have any cognitive dissonance about whether or not someone's gay? Let's talk about that for a while and just revel in our success. You know, so right, so that's just, they should abandon that social justice forced fed spoon down our throat. You know, it didn't work for Captain Marvel. You know, they had to spend $300 million in theater tickets just to pad the sales and then show social proof of the sales so that it can inspire another $300 million in sales on top of that, you know, padding it. So, and finally, a number one storyline. I'll end with this because the game is great, but it annoys me. Makes me want to play part one, which actually in the end just makes me want to play Days Gone. And I can't wait for a more realistic, conservative approach to a Days Gone part two, where I just know that critics will hate Days Gone 2, but players are going to love the crap out of it when they stay true to themselves and what drives a good story. And what the characters would have naturally done. Okay, unlike, say, Tommy and Joel, who should have given themselves fake names in the first place at the beginning of Last of Us Part 2. They're smarter than that. Than Tommy being like, oh yeah, you have an encampment about 3 hours down the hill that way. We got tons of food, you know, to help you guys. And, oh, hey, my name's Tommy, and that's my brother. At that point, Joel was forced to say, oh, well, I guess I can't say my name's Hank. They know who Tommy and Joel are, so they also know that Tommy has a brother whose name is Joel. So when Tommy says, oh, that's my brother, Joel basically was like, okay, I'm Joel. And he was already looking around to see, all right, who's going to hit first. So it's the story of this game is very frustrating. So storyline number one, I shall call it Joel's previous life. Okay? So while it can be argued that another The Last of Us game focusing on Joel would cheapen his death at the beginning of part 2, there are still parts of his story which would make for engrossing player experience. For the fan service, okay, because fans are not stupid. We know what a good story is. But we want what we want, but we also want to look at that story and be like, dang, that was a huge twist. That was amazing. You know, it was better than I could have dreamed of. You know, in the end, we want what we want, but if you do it in such a way that's like, you know, twisting and great plot twists and stuff like that, you know what I'm getting at. So for fan service, a game with more of a focus on Joel's descent into becoming totally hopeless following the aftermath of his daughter Sarah's death would further flesh out the character for sure. A game would also give more weight behind some characters from the first game. Okay, that's what great trilogies do. They tie in the history, part 1 and part 2, and the histories of both. The backstories of what was introduced in part 2 and the backstories of what was introduced in part 1 that made us care so much about the characters. So for example, in the brief time the players are with that one woman Tess, she shines as a strong character. We've already forgotten her by this point in the series, but a further backstory would illustrate her effects on Joel, and whether he would have had redemption without the aid of Ellie, without any of Ellie's help. Okay? This story arc has been given much, speculation through various fan fictions that I've seen over the past few years, but none as rich as The Last of Us Dirt, written by a fan called Astern. Dirt covers Tommy and Joel's journey from overrun QZs in Texas to joining a band of vigilantes led by a former judge to finally parting ways once the Fireflies have become more established. An entire game dedicated to the hopelessness of the world in the aftermath of the Cordyceps outbreak, as well as the dissolution of Joel and Tommy's fraternity, their brotherhood. It could add so much scope to the background of the franchise that we all love. So, what this would do is, it would, I think, rightfully destroy the moral ambiguity that the writer wanted this installment to create. He wanted this to be a moral conundrum. I see the attempts. They're respectable. You hear about the other side's life and what they're coming back home to, hoping to come back home to safely. And that's really cool and everything. But they still want to kill. Like, they're working hard to obey orders to just go out and kill somebody who doesn't deserve to be killed. So, easy solution, just don't participate in a war that you didn't learn every single thing about, right? And don't just blindly follow orders. Okay, so the moral ambiguity is in the enemy side here in this game that we're fighting against. They believe that Joel's actions were bad, and so the writer's trying to make us believe that is possible too. So, this backstory of, Tommy and Joel, joining a vigilante group and then realizing that people are pretty corrupt, that would actually restore this idea that Joel should, in the end, should not have trusted the surgeon in part 1, should not have trusted these medical people, should not have trusted them at all, that they said this procedure will kill her, and it's likely that they didn't discover more after that they didn't try to research hard any other possible solutions, that they just want a vaccine. Can we find a suitable sacrifice to make this happen? And that's as far as it went. So this backstory would actually give moral ambiguity to the right things and take away moral ambiguity to this storyline. Okay, it's kind of like when what was it? It's kind of like when the Rise of Skywalker had to go in and undo all the crap that The Last Jedi kind of force-fed in there. A lot of social justice, themes were put into The Last Jedi. Like, oh, anyone can be a Jedi. It's like, well, no, you can't. Oh, anyone can be this or that. No, you can't. So, yeah. So that's my breakdown between 3 videos that could not hold an internet connection of the 10 possible storylines that they could pursue with Last of Us Part 3, and hopefully give redemption to the obvious hubris in which the story writer wrote Part 2 with. Okay? Yes. Did they totally do a safe play? Yeah. They might say, oh, we did a bold thing here. No, you didn't. The media is absolutely rallying around anything that, disturbs the patriarchy, of the past. And anything that's about gays and lesbians is not resisted, it is supported. That's not brave. Okay, so when you are writing along the lines of the majority media opinion, you are not part of the resistance. You're not part of the brave, okay? You're basically preaching to the choir and saying, give me my good rating now that I did something good that you'll agree with. That's not brave. That's not good writing. Days Gone, that was good writing. Seriously, like, Days Gone was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely resistant to the powers that be. Yeah, there were people that were implied lesbian, but guess what? You found out they were lesbian, and they didn't make anything of it. It's like, oh, okay, here's a character, that person's a hetero. Here's a character, that person's a lesbian. Good to know. Okay, cool. And they went along with their day. And that's a success in society. That's success. You know, not sitting around talking about how victimized lesbians are, and an encampment that doesn't victimize lesbians. And a campment that would not even do it. Okay, but in this story, Last of Us Part 2, we have a whole bartender scene where the guy's like, I'm not serving your kind. It's like, really? No one would even do that. It's like, no. Nobody would do that. Not in a post-apocalyptic